What is up, everybody, and welcome to the pre-lock show for Thursday night football. We're gonna we're gonna get to some football stuff. Wait a minute, is this? I don't like the way that is. Let me get that little part. I gotta be. It's terrible, terrible looking. It's very unprofessional of me. Yes, Thursday night football. We're gonna do it up here. We're gonna do it up good. We got a good game tonight. We got a good game. So fire off all those questions right now, guys, and we'll answer them all because we got about 30 minutes just to goof around and talk a little sports here, man. So Thursday nights are for Kyle Murray. That's who joins us here on the Thursday night show. So bring in Kyle now. Kyle, how is your day going, man?
Yeah, it's good. Just got off the NBA show, and now we're going to talk about hopefully awesome game tonight between two pretty good teams. I know last week was a little bit of a snooze fest. That ended up being okay for fantasy stuff, but hopefully this one is going to be a good game all around.
It should be. I mean, we got two high level teams going at it, and it means something. So we should have something going on here. Yeah, it's I don't know what to make of this game. This is honestly like it can go so many different ways. Like these could be two good offenses shooting it out tonight, or at least scoring very efficiently at a pretty high rate. Or it could be defensive struggle. Like it really could be because Baltimore's defense is very good. Cincy can be very good, and Baltimore can really bog down on offense. So I don't know how it's going to go. Game script tonight is really like up in the air, but it should be a fun game at least and very competitive. And somebody's going to lose this game and not feel very good about themselves. That'll be a 2-game losing streak for them after both of these teams lost games last week that they really should have won. So it's going to be a fun game. All right, guys, get those questions in. That's what we're here for. Don't want to have to break this thing down player by player and all that other stuff. I want the questions, man. Give me the questions on DFS. If you got player props out, if you're playing underdog or prize picks or any of that stuff, and you have questions, ask the questions, fire them off. If you just want to put together a little player prop parlay on one of those sites and you just want to shoot us, what do you think about this or that? Put it up in there in chat, man, and we'll answer it because that's what we're here for. So keeping track of all that stuff. And I got a question for you, Kyle, real quick, man. Man, I am on life support in my season-long league. I mean, I had a rough 4-week stretch. It was bad, and I've hit every injury in the world, right? But I'm on life support, trying to survive. I'm getting HN back this week and Cooper Cup back this week, and who knows? Like I've lost Chubb for the year and a couple other guys. So, but here's my question to you, because Lamar suits up tonight. I got to have a big game out of my QB. I don't just need like the safety of a player. I need high floor stuff here from here on out. Tua or Lamar? Do I start Lamar tonight or wait on Tua on Sunday?
Oh, man, that's tough. I think, man, it's tough because I thought for sure the next option, once you say Lamar, like he is, in terms of ceiling, he's one of the most, high explosive ceiling type players, but Tua's up there with him. I think I go.
That's why I asked, because I can't make it. That's a tough one, man.
Are you playing a chain this week?
I am.
I would go Lamar then, because if you get a big game from a chain, which we've seen him take away from Tua a couple times already this year, I think they both have very high ceilings. So I don't think you're sacrificing a ton. I think they both have very high ceilings, but I'll give the edge to Lamar, just because that way you can get a little bit of maybe ceiling on their own rather than maybe Tua or a chain taking away from each other.
That makes sense. I'm gonna have to maybe throw that in there and hope for the best. I need some big weeks. All right, guys. Let's see here. Oh, injury report. Let me pull up some injuries, man. I don't even know what we had here on the injury inactive front as we approach this game. I was watching a little basketball. I didn't get to put up inactives. All right, what we got here? Baltimore. Oh yeah, Marlon Humphrey out. That's a big one. Ronnie Stanley is out tonight. That's pretty big for Baltimore in terms of just players on that field that make an impact on them. T. Higgins, of course, is out for Cincinnati. Sam Hubbard is out. Yeah, okay. So I think Baltimore losing Humphreys. Like I want to say it makes a difference, but honestly, about the first 5 weeks of the year, they were missing like 2 or 3 guys out of the secondary consistently. And they always put up these good defensive performances. Nothing ever seems to bother them on defense. It's a system if I've ever seen it, man. So I don't know how much that different. But does any of this stuff? Obviously, T Higgins, we can hit on that news in a minute. But any of this other stuff from either one of these teams move the needle for you?
Not really. I mean, obviously the stuff that we already had early on in the week. But in terms of stuff that we got today specifically, nothing overall that's moving the needle a whole lot. I think obviously the Higgins news is pretty big in terms of the way the projections move with him out, but we were kind of expecting that. So I think to even open the week, we had him ruled out already. So nothing crazy.
Yeah, last week against Houston with T Higgins out, and Jamar Chase nursing a bad back. He still came alive in the second half. Or Jamar Chase did and really did what he needed to do fantasy wise. A lot of people went to Irwin, and he started off like, oh my God, if you don't have Irwin, you're done after the first drive with a 30-yard touchdown. He cooled off after that, and later on it was Tyler Boyd, who for most of the season has looked washed up, man, and done. And all of a sudden he explodes. So Higgins is out tonight. We assume Jamar is probably a little bit better with the bag, but it's only been a short week for him and everything. Like, what do you make of these Cincy wide receivers, man?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of approaching it as if Jamar's at least as healthy as he can be. I don't, I think that he played last week, and like you said, he kind of came on, made the big play late. He wasn't really overly involved throughout the entirety of the game, but we know that that's what you have with Jamar, the big play upside. So I'm kind of approaching it as if he's fully healthy and good to go. And obviously, when you think of that, with no T Higgins, I know that there's a theory that, okay, T Higgins there will take some attention off of Jamar Chase and that'll help him. But this year, he's been a lot better with no T Higgins. He's been targeted extremely heavily. I think he's averaging nearly 3 targets more per game with no T Higgins. So I'm expecting him to be heavily involved. We know that he loves playing the Ravens. He's had a few massive games against the Ravens, including 2, I think, 150-plus yard games, including one 200-yard game in his rookie year. So I like Chase a lot. I think Boyd's also going to be heavily involved. We saw Irwin score last week. I think he's going to be involved as well. And then when you consider the fact that, you have Higgins and Andre Evosius, I think is how you say his name. Probably got that wrong. But he was also a guy who we were kind of projecting to take some targets away. So I think that actually helps out of all these guys. It helps Irwin the most, just kind of opens up a little bit more out of the ancillary guys. I think Chase and Boyd were going to have their roles no matter what. I think with him being out, that helps Irwin a little bit. So I think Irwin is also pretty firmly in play.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. Yes, I see you in chat, Mr. Butthole Jenkins. I see you. We're going to get to the Plums play of the night here soon enough. Let's call it about 12 to 15 minutes. We'll break that out. Let's get to some other questions here. Okay, first off, Derek Ringery is in the YouTube chat. It says, Big T said Keaton Mitchell is the worst play of the slate. What say me or us? I would say shame on Big T, man. It is a showdown. If anybody should be able to tell you that any player basically that's going to see the field in a showdown is a perfectly acceptable play. It's a showdown, man. Anything can happen, especially a guy like Mitchell, who I don't think is going to be that highly owned. I don't know. I got to check the updated numbers, but he's a really good player, man. Watch him for Light in college, he was really, really good. So I don't know about that one, Big T. I don't know. I kind of don't think he's the worst play on the slate. You think Keaton Mitchell's the worst play on the slate?
No, I think you can do a lot worse. I mean, I guess I get the fact that he's priced up, and maybe Harbaugh's playing with us a little bit, saying that he needs to get more work and stuff, and he could easily just dangle it out there in front of the Bengals, and obviously continue to use Gus Edwards and Justice Hill. And, this is going to be a spot where Hill's probably still going to be involved. So it might be a little bit of a 3-headed monster there. But like you said, it's a showdown slate. And in terms of guys who've shown explosiveness, Gus Edwards, not really. Mitchell, definitely. And that can really go a long way in terms of making or breaking a showdown slate. So Mitchell has been very explosive. So I don't think he's the worst play on the slate now.
Yeah, that's kind of that's why I have so many hesitations with Lamar so much, is that this offense more times than not, they just want to run the ball and they just want to pound it, man. And if they can find just a sliver of hope in the running game, that's what they're going to do. And they're not going to pass it very much. It's weird like that. And sometimes it's incredibly frustrating when you're on the passing game for Baltimore and then that stuff starts happening. So I would say that on any game, any of these guys, maybe not Justice Hill, but Keaton or Gus Edwards can absolutely bust a slate wide open. We saw Gus do it, wow, like 2 weeks in a row. He had like 5 touchdowns in 2 weeks, a 2 week span. Then Mitchell took off for that huge 140-yard game a couple weeks ago. Yeah, and the running backs for Baltimore are always in play no matter what. So you got that going from Greek Hippie. Has a couple questions. We'll answer them both, knock them out both at the same time. Is Boyd in play tonight? Is number one question from him. Is Boyd in play tonight?
Yeah, definitely. I think Boyd is going to be maybe the third best receiver on the board. Obviously, positions don't really matter a ton, but a lot of times when you're talking about where you're building lineups, correlation, all that stuff, it does factor in. So, yeah, Boyd definitely makes sense tonight.
And then his second question is it a 2-quarterback FanDuel lineup night? And I would answer that with these quarterbacks and the way this game could go either way. I think 2 quarterbacks is my preferred build on FanDuel. What about you?
Yeah, if you can make it work salary wise, I think definitely. There's definitely a lot of floor as well as ceiling combination between both of these guys. So if you can make it work, definitely.
Yeah, JB says who's the captain tonight for DK large field GPP? Who's the captain we should be looking at?
Yeah, there's a lot of guys that I like quite a bit here, but in terms of if you're looking to be a little contrarian, I think Zay Flowers is probably my favorite. Looks like we have him sub 7% captain ownership today. I do think that in terms of lineups that I'm building, I like Jamar and the captain. I like both quarterbacks. I like Andrews, but I think Zay will be the one that I think will be a little bit lower owned than those bunch and still have quite a bit of upside.
Yeah, I could see that happening on DraftKings. He can be a PPR guy. A bunch of short check downs, and if he gets in the end zone, he's in that optimal. So I don't mind that call at all. I would also say, man, it's a tough one. There's a lot of guys. I mean, I don't want to. It's tough for the running back play on DraftKings. I kind of don't want to go there. I think running back on FanDuel is very contrarian. A Baltimore running back. I'm not into Joe Mixon, man. I think I've had almost enough of Joe Mixon. Like he's gonna have he's gonna have a couple games this year where he falls in the end zone 2 or 3 times. But man, if you're playing him 16 or if he's on a main slate, let's say he's on a main slate 12 times, like he's gonna bust completely like 10 of those times. That's just who he is these days. So I'm not sure I'm in a Joe Mixon. So I guess I would say large field. I'm trying to look for lower owned guys with some upside. Maybe that is a Tyler Boyd, man. Low owned and PPR, and maybe Chase is still a little bit banged up, and maybe you can get there, but kind of feel like that is. We got about 19 minutes left. I'll give it about seven-ish minutes, and we'll break out the Plums play of the night. Derek K. I believe I got that. Duvernay's effect on Aguilar anymore or any other relevant Baltimore wide receivers. You got what you got going on with Duvernay, Aguilar, or any of the Baltimore wide receivers? We talked about Zay Jones, but are any of them relevant at all, really?
I mean, you can make slight cases for guys like Bateman and even OBJ. Obviously, OBJ caught the 40-yard slant and scored. It was a touchdown in back-to-back games. But I don't think Duvernay has a big impact on anybody. We're not really projecting him to be overly involved in the offense. Over the last 4 or 5 weeks or so, he's really failed to get involved offensively. More of a special teams guy there. But right now we have Bateman for about a 15% target share. That's not a bad number. He's now had 16% of the targets or more in back-to-back weeks. So seemingly getting a little bit more involved. And then Beckham only had I think 1 or 2 targets last week, only 5% of the targets. But he did score. So I think both those guys are in play because it's a showdown. But I don't think necessarily Duvernay impacts them at all. I think Aguilar is definitely a flyer type option. Probably not a guy I have a ton of confidence in, but he could maybe catch a long pass and maybe find the end zone.
Can you play all of Lamar, Chase, and Burrow in a large field and still make a plus EV lineup? That's a good question.
Yeah, I mean, so it depends on which one you want in the captain spot. I guess they're all fairly similar price, so I guess it's not a big deal. But there are a couple of value guys that I think could potentially make it work. A couple of these Cincinnati tight ends. You have Drew Sample, who's been pretty involved over the last couple of weeks, especially with T. Higgins being banged up. So you have a couple of tight end options that are cheap. You have, Charlie Jones, who's making his return from the IR, who we don't really know what his role is going to be. And that's always something that can be scary for some people. But for a showdown, you say, okay, maybe an unknown is a good thing here. Maybe he steps into a bigger role. Maybe he takes work from Trent Irwin. So Charlie Jones, I think, is probably going to be a punt returner type guy, but we'll see what he does in a spot where the Bengals are really limited from a injury standpoint on the outside with these wide receivers being banged up. So Charlie Jones is the guy I don't mind taking a stab on in tournaments. Aguilar, like I mentioned earlier. So those are a couple names that you can definitely use to for salary relief to get those expensive players.
Yeah, and to your, what you were trying to hint at there is, will it be duped a lot? Man, you'd have to be way different. I don't even know how you
Yeah.
would do it. Like you'd have to be, yeah, throw something crazy in there, and that's fine. You can do that. It's a showdown, man. I've already said anything could happen.
Yeah.
Name a random ass player and put him on there and pray for something. Who knows, Trevion Williams or something, and Joe Mixon has to come out of the game to tie a shoe, and it's a goal line carry or something like that. Favorite FanDuel captain? He didn't specify. It was Black Main. He didn't specify if it was large field or small field, single entry, or anything. Just his favorite FanDuel captain. So just give me one for large field and one if you're in a very small, almost cash game type of field.
Yeah, so for the small field one, I think you're sticking with either quarterback or Jamar Chase. At least for me personally, I think that's the way to go. I know people like to kind of give receivers a little bit of a knockdown there on FanDuel, but I think Jamar Chase, he has the big play upside, he has the yardage upside, he has the touchdown upside. So I think he's definitely a place. One of those three is where you probably want to go for small field or cash type builds. For large field, a guy that I do like is Gus Edwards here. He's a guy that if he falls in the end zone, we saw him do it a couple weeks ago. He had, I think, 5 or 6 carries and scored twice. Those are the kinds of nights that can really help a running back in terms of paying off there. He's very expensive, so I don't think anyone's going to play him. And on FanDuel, you don't really have to worry about the multipliers because it's the same price whether they're an MVP or not. So I think Gus Edwards makes a good amount of sense over there on FanDuel in the MVP for a large field.
Yeah, I'd echo that as far as a large field. Pick a Baltimore running back, man. Pick a Baltimore running back and roll with it. You just never know how that stuff's going to play out. So, yeah, I like that one. All right, let's see here. What's next? Is Hendricks out for Cincinnati? Remarkably, no. I believe Hendricks has been ruled in for this game for a couple of days now. He made a really big time recovery from his injury, and he's going to be in. So they got some, at least most of the people on defense, that's going to help them. Doug Harrelson, if you were projecting a Ravens win, how do you feel about forcing exactly one Ravens running back? DraftKings mass multi-entry tournaments. So if you're projecting a Raven win, how do you feel about forcing only one, just exactly one Ravens running back? If the Ravens win, if that's your game script, the Ravens win, not 2 and not 0, but just 1. Are you okay with that?
Yeah. I think so. I guess I would potentially toy with the idea of maybe having, like, I don't know if you want to limit yourself from having 2, because I do think that potentially 2 of these guys could pay off, especially if the Ravens do win and where they are running the ball quite a bit. But I don't hate the idea of saying, okay, I only want one, because if I just want to hopefully get right the one that goes off. But I wouldn't be surprised if multiple running backs score here for Baltimore, especially in a game where they win. So that's the one thing I'm hesitant about, is limiting that to 1. But if you are, projecting a Baltimore win in a game where Baltimore's going to control the game script and run the ball a lot, I do think that having at least 1 makes a lot of sense. But I don't know if I'd want to necessarily limit it to just 1 in all of your lineups. I think that's the spot where I would build, half your lineups with the rule of just 1, and then maybe the other half with 1 to 2.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like Ravens could win, but what kind of a win? Like you said, control the game, blowout, or a close game, shootout.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. It's just different. But the Ravens win. I'd feel good about a running back, and maybe even two. So yeah, that's fine. DK captain, large field GPP. Yeah, we kind of covered that. Just a cheaper guy. We both like the couple of cheaper options there. Mardon Yeezy, Boyd or Irwin in captain on DraftKings. That could be $1 million question because I think they both have big you can check off a lot of boxes on both of them with T Higgins out. But which one would be your favorite for captain, Boyd or Irwin?
I think Boyd. I just think he's a little bit more of the higher upside of the two, and I think that's kind of what I'm looking for the MVP.
I can get behind that. All right, let's see here. More questions here. We'll give it a few more questions, then we'll do our Plums play of the night. Question for a DK GPP. Who's lower owned at captain, Lamar or Burrow? I don't know. Let's check out the ownership and see if there's a big difference there. You don't happen to know the numbers right offhand. Let's see. Burrow about 12 in captain on DraftKings. And where's Lamar? Lamar about, oh no, 16. Yeah. Burrow's a little bit lower on, but it's about 5%. Does 5% ownership, does that move the needle for you? Or is it like, that's not that big of a deal?
I don't think it's too big of a deal. I think the way I like to use ownership for the most part on showdown slates is to really, I guess, when it comes to that, comparing it one player to another, is more so get a ranking rather than like try to accept that number is going to be exact. I think showdown, you can play 4 or 5 different contests and the ownerships will be wildly different in all of the contests just because of how volatile lineups are being built within different slates, different contests within showdown. So I more so like to use them as rankings. So 5% probably won't throw it off for me too much, but I would feel like saying, okay, Lamar's probably going to be more popular than Burrow in the captain spot.
Yeah, man. I don't know. I've just a lot of times these numbers for ownership kind of just feel like they bleed into each other. I can't really tell them apart after a while. What's 16 to 11? Who cares? In that case, who's going to be the higher scorer? That matters more to me. The big divider would be, on a slate like this, captain ownership, Lamar's at 16, or I could take a shot and be contrarian at Gus Edwards at 3. Now there's a big difference. Now that moves the needle as far as ownership. I don't think 16 to 11 moves the needle very much. I don't really care about 10 to 15% ownership on a main slate. If a guy's 40, okay, I got to do a double check now. Is he worth the fade and things like that? But yeah, the difference between those two guys don't move the needle too much. You starting a Bengals onslaught with Steve Jones asks, if you're starting a Bengals onslaught, are you doing so with Burrow or Chase as your captain?
I prefer Chase just because of the fact that I tend to give the edge to receivers in GPPs, just because I automatically think that quarterbacks are going to be a bit more popular. But tonight, I really wouldn't be surprised if Chase was the more popular option. So I think I would actually flip that and go Burrow. And if you're assuming that it's an onslaught, you're probably assuming that the Bengals are really efficient and really productive across the board. And therefore, you're probably wanting to pair Burrow up with 2 or 3, maybe even 4 pass catchers. So I think I would actually lean Burrow there.
All right, we got about 9 minutes left. I think we got to get to some plums, man. Some plum. We got to fill it in the plums here, and we got to give our plums play. Then I'm gonna turn the floor over to you first and let you do your thing.
Yeah, so a lot of really good options in this one. I'm actually gonna give 2, one for each site. On FanDuel, I'm gonna go with Gus Edwards. I think he makes a lot of sense. I think he's a guy who could, easily fall in the end zone a couple times and really get overlooked. I think a lot of potential Keaton Mitchell hype combined with the price tag being increased on FanDuel. So I'm gonna go with Gus Edwards on FanDuel, but on DraftKings, I'm gonna be a little bit of a chalk donkey here, and I'm gonna go Jamar Chase. I think he has a monster game here. Me and Jamino had a little bit of a debate over Jamar Chase about the projections here. I ended up getting him bumped up a little bit. I think Jamar Chase is in for a big game. I think he's going to see a lot of the targets here with no T. Higgins. So I'm going to go with Jamar Chase. I know it's a little bit, I think it's the first time I've really been a chalk donkey with the Plums play. So I'm going to give myself a little bit of a pass here, but I'm going to go with Chase.
I like it. I like it. Butthole Jenkins says farmers market plums. I like that. All right. Tell you what, I'm going to give my plums play tonight. And you know what? Big T is going to be sick. He's going to be sick because I am going to take it. Now, this is all relative to ownership and price and everything, but Keaton Mitchell not that expensive. Certainly not going to be that highly owned. And I know, yeah, we could put Lamar in there or Burrow in there. Yeah, there's some expensive guys. Those, I'm not going to take the layup here, man. I want a home run. I want to hit a home run, and I think Keaton is a home run hitter. I've seen it enough. He just needs some touches here. Just needs some touches. So I'm going to go with Keaton Mitchell. One big long touchdown, like he said, each of the last 2 weeks, and we're probably in the green here. And if he does anything, extra on top of that, boy, he's in the optimal, and it's a no-brainer. At some point, Harbaugh's not an idiot. He's got to recognize that, yeah, this guy gives me the biggest play upside of any of these guys I have. Let's run him out there. So I'm gonna go Keaton Mitchell, and the haters are gonna have to roll over on their graves, man, on this one. But a few more questions here before we jump out. If you got any questions, fire them off now, because now is the time. JB says $3,400 on DK or less. Favorite player to punt?
Ooh, this one's tricky. I think there's a couple of names that you said 3,400 is the number?
34. I'll throw one out there while you get your bearings straight here. I would say for 3,400 or less on DraftKings. Okay, so T. Higgins is out. I'll throw out there Tanner Hudson. Boy, I tell you what, I was watching the game last weekend, and my gosh, to start that game, he had about 7 straight targets on the first 2 drives, and I was like, oh man, all right, this is not the Trent Irwin game. This is the Tanner Hudson game. Should have known. So I'll throw out Tanner Hudson with T. Higgins out, but doesn't look particularly chalky. Like I said, that those kind of numbers kind of bleed in when they're not something crazy. You got a different one?
Yeah, I think Hudson's probably the most optimal play here. I do think that he might be a little bit more unpopular, especially in smaller field stuff than the number that we're showing here. I'm gonna go with Charlie Jones. I think that is a completely off the wall type play. He's 200. He's basically free. And again, I think if we have anything wrong in the projections, I think that it would be the lack of Charlie Jones maybe stealing a little bit of these targets from a guy like Trent Irwin. Again, Jones was a electric college producer and a guy that they were high on coming into the season as a playmaker. So maybe they use this as an opportunity to get the ball to Jones more.
Yeah, I like that one. He was really good in college. They do give him some punt duty, run back responsibilities too. Maybe you can double dip and stack a little defense with your punt returner too. You never know. Dave Jones, Mitchell or Edwards in the flex?
That one's tough. I feel like it's a very broad question. Like I think that for these two specifically, I do think that it's to know if you're okay with leaving that much salary on the table. If you're trying to be more contrarian, I think that if you are trying to be more contrarian, I do think that they're going to be about the same in terms of popularity, and Gus Edwards a little bit more expensive. I think I would take Gus Edwards slightly, but if you are able to use that $1,400 to pay up and improve somewhere else, I think Mitchell makes a lot of sense to drop down. But if it's just those two straight up and you're not doing anything else with your lineup, I give the slight edge to Gus Edwards.
How do you feel about Travion Williams as a punt?
Yeah, he's not bad. I mean, I think he's a better option. I think for the most part than Charlie Jones. I think Jones might have a little bit more of a ceiling. I think for Williams, you're hoping that he gets maybe some garbage time run or maybe a catch or two, but he's not bad. I just don't think he has much of a ceiling here. I would actually prefer Sample.
Yeah, is Divine or Dell? No, Divine. He says I think he means Odell. Is Odell Beckham Jr. worthy of a captain spot or not? Man, he can be quite polarizing, Odell. What do you think about Odell?
Yeah, I don't think he's quite worthy of a captain spot, but it also, I mean, if you're playing 150 lineups, I don't mind having a few of them with Odell and the captain. He has, again, like I said, scored in back-to-back games. He actually has about 10 DK points in 3 straight now. So at 3.6, there have been worse producers at this price. Or sorry, 3 out of the last 4 games, 10 DK points or more. So not really a favorite of mine for captain purposes, but you could do worse.
Yeah, I was ready to write him off, and he just looked like there's no way he's ever going to recover. Then he got a cheap one 2 weeks ago in the end zone from the backup quarterback, and no big deal. Then last week, boy, he turned on the Jets on a play, and he was like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe he's still got a little something left in him. So I'm not ready to captain him, but, whatever teaches on, you just never know. All right, Rucan. I have enough money left for either Drew Sample or Charlie Jones. Thoughts on which player to use in a large field GPP on DK
In a large field, I think I'm sticking with Charlie Jones. Charlie Jones, don't get me wrong, he has a very high likelihood of getting you 0. That likelihood is far greater than the odds that Sample gets you 0. But in terms of who's more likely to score 12 DK points out of those two, I actually think it's Charlie Jones. I think he's just the higher upside type play. If he does crack into that role a little bit, that maybe he eats into Irwin's role and he catches a touchdown and maybe racks up 2 or 3 catches. I just don't see Sample doing a ton. He's a third tight end on the roster here. So I'm going to go with Charlie Jones in large field, but I do think that Sample is a safer option, but for upside, I'll go Jones.
Any love for Rashad Bateman?
Yeah, I like Bateman a little bit. I think from a pricing perspective, he's an interesting pivot off of a guy like Mitchell and even Trenton Irwin there. So I do think that the low ownership is interesting, but I do think that I would want to use him in lineups where I'm, not using Baltimore running backs or maybe, building around a Cincinnati onslaught or Cincinnati win, because that will force Baltimore to throw more, and therefore you'll probably be liking Bateman's odds a little bit more.
Yeah, about 2 minutes left. We're about to get out of here. One more question for you. Large field with both Baltimore running backs. Do you run it back with Chase or Lamar and DK GPPs? Both large field with both Baltimore running backs. Do you go Chase or do you go Lamar?
Yeah, I think you got to go Chase there, because if you're playing both Baltimore running backs, you're assuming a couple of rushing touchdowns, and if that's the case, you're probably taking away from Lamar. I guess he could throw passing touchdowns to those guys, but I think it's pretty unlikely, so I'll take Chase there.
Yeah. All right, guys. We got about 90 seconds before this thing locks, so we're going to jump up out of here. We appreciate you coming on and firing off those questions. Really good show tonight. We'll be back. There'll be another show on Sunday, and I'll be back on Monday, and we'll be back next week. Oh, no, wait a minute. We got to figure out next. We are 1 week away from Thanksgiving, man. I can't believe it's already here. We got to figure that one out. But, guys, we do appreciate the interactive nature of this program. Plenty of shows on the horizon. Until next time, good luck on those GPPs for Kyle Murray. I'm Chop, and we are out of here.